Guiding Light. Presented by Does, the soap that does everything in your washing machine. And Ivory Soap, the most famous soap in the world.
Soap operas, the inspiration for many genres of television, radio broadcasts, and even novels, not only nationally but worldwide, found its first strides toward success by inspiring the struggling people of the Great Depression.
The daytime drama Painted Dreams was first aired on October 20th, 1930 by WGN, the broadcast company for the Chicago Tribune. This was the first soap opera of many to come. What made soap operas different from most other radio broadcasts was that soap operas were the first to use relatable characters to portray an exciting plot. Another thing that made them unique was how the characters' dilemmas seemed to stretch on without solution, leaving the writers to allow the plot to span for many episodes while still keeping fans intrigued with the ever-expanding plots. This concept would shape most modern entertainment, but it wasn't an easy path to success. It took tragedy to bring soap operas to success.
The creator of the first soap opera, Irma Phillips, did not become a success overnight. Before becoming a soap opera star, her father died when she was 8 years old, leaving her mother alone to raise the children. And at 19, Phillips was pregnant, abandoned by her boyfriend. Phillips worked as a school teacher in Dayton, Ohio, providing for her newborn child. She had aspirations to become an actress, but she was told that she was too plain to have any real success. Later, she began playing roles on many different radio productions on WGN and struck gold when she wrote and aired the first daytime drama serial, Painted Dreams. Phillips not only wrote for Painted Dreams, but also played in a few roles as well.
Getting a soap opera on the air was no easy task. They were major financial gambles for two reasons. The first being, soap operas to begin with were an experimental format, a test to see if radio shows could get sponsors during the day. This prospect at the time was almost unheard of, as in the late 1920s, prospective radio listeners were Americans who worked during the day, and for that reason investors believed radio was only listened to in the afternoon. So it was extremely difficult for radio companies to get daytime sponsors, so it was extremely rare for radio companies to have daytime ad slots. But the genius of soap operas was to target not the working Americans at the time, but instead the many stay-at-home wives of the time. Although this was very cleverly planned, this strategy was no guarantee for getting sponsors, and it would take some solid evidence to convince them to get on board. The next big risk was the originality of soap operas. Soap operas were an almost entirely original concept, and the closest thing to a predecessor it had was dramatic comedy, a genre that was, in basic summary, a late-night radio series in which humor is used to tell the story of a character undertaking a change for the better, which overall is really only a faint relationship to soap operas. The problem with this is when a new genre arises, there are no pre-existing fans to work off of, making it a risky investment. For this reason, Chicago was very important for the success of soaps, because places like New York, that were radio giants at the time and still are today, could not afford to gamble on soap operas as their economy was highly dependent on their radio broadcasts. But the other broadcasting cities that were able to afford a risk like soap operas often were half-rate. For example, Hollywood, which was a city that did not rely on radio broadcast, but for that reason had far inferior broadcasting technology. However, Chicago was right in the sweet spot of not too dependent on the radio to not allow risks, but nonetheless a radio-heavy city, as news companies like the Chicago Tribune used radio locally. This is why Chicago played a crucial part in the success of soap operas, but their sponsors played an equally important role in their success.
Without sponsors, soap operas would not have enough funding to remain on air, but it was a struggle to get advertisers to sponsor soap operas to begin with. As we've said, this was due to soap operas being a new format that wasn't a proven moneymaker yet. Most advertisements were targeted towards women, and more specifically stay-at-home wives, that were more likely to be listening to a daytime drama program. While soaps were a risky investment for radio stations and advertisers, they were a hit format for most radio listeners. The first soaps were aired in a post-Depression America, with bleak economic downturns and not much hope for American businesses. Soap operas tried to reflect this in their plots and characters. The characters of a soap opera lived through the same troubles that Americans at the time did. This gave soap operas a relatable quality that gradually contributed to its success. The Machiavellian protagonists and relatable themes made for a winning formula that would attract viewers for generations.
By 1945, 15 years after the original soap opera Paint Dreams, 64 serials were on the air from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on NBC. Historian Robert LaGuardia said that by the late 1930s, soap operas were radio's most economically powerful product. With viewership on the rise during that time and much critical acclaim coming from critics in the US, the soap opera format had proven itself to be a great success. Soap operas greatly influence much of our modern entertainment today. They revolutionized radio broadcast and television by introducing serial plots and stories to them. Many radio broadcasts and TV shows today follow the serial drama format, and it's grown to be a standard on some networks. Soaps also proved that women, or more specifically stay-at-home wives, were a large market for advertising, and that daytime ad slots were not entirely fruitless ventures. Soap operas had relatable characters that gave listeners hope in a post-Depression environment. These relatable character archetypes still pop up in our modern media today, and in part we have to thank soap operas. While soap opera viewership has dwindled in the US, some US serials still garner many viewers in other countries. According to CNN, in reference to the NBC serial The Bold and the Beautiful, the show can be seen in more than 110 countries, and it garners 24.5 million viewers across the globe in 2008. While the format may be considered dead by some, its relatable plotlines helped Americans through the Great Depression, and the influence of soap operas can be felt in much of our modern entertainment today. And frankly, I'm happy Chicago had something to do with it.
Clips from old soap operas in general, they gave us a good idea for like what they were really like, and the other thing is people write books about them for some reason.
One of the places we went to was the college library at NEIU, and that has a lot of cool historical archives, along with many dissertations from professors, and surprisingly, some professors' dissertations actually are about soap operas, so that was sort of good.
Television was actually my second major, so I'm with you on that. Of course.
Tell me about the making of the documentary itself, how that process goes.
That was mostly you here.
Okay, well, I did most of the editing, but of course we shot it together.
Yeah.
Now, I realize it's sort of an unconventional documentary, not many people actually show themselves, but we thought we just wanted to, once again, keep it original and not just information with an image. We wanted it to be a bit more dynamic, a bit more entertaining.
Yeah.
Have you guys done a history for project?
I have done 3, he has done none.
Oh, yeah.
Just one.
First one, third one. Yes.
Did you, so my standard question is why you choose documentary form, but obviously that's, it would have been weird if you didn't in this.
Yeah. Well, I've done, like I said, I've done 3 history fair projects, and each year I've done different mediums, so that I like to change it up,
Was that part of the choosing process that you knew you wanted to do a documentary?
Well, and also he's good at video editing, and that's another thing that we put into consideration. So that's just what we went to.
Yeah, and also I obviously it fits really well with actual soap operas, since a lot of them are actually on TV. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how you also focused that Chicago really played an important part.
Yeah.
Did you ever, in your research, did you find out anything about, for example, I'm not sure too much about Irmo Phillips, but Lee Phillips was an important Chicago aspect here in the 1960s and and 70s. She had her own talk show. She was very much on the Chicago scene for the soap operas. Did you run into her name at all?
Well, I mean, I did hear about her in one of our secondary sources, but I just didn't want to diverge too much from our.
To be totally honest, there's a lot beyond what we told. Like there are things that tie to women's rights and LGBTQ rights, but we wanted to stay in our general theme. So
in general, we want to focus on two main things. Its influence on modern media today, along with how it helped people, see hope in the Great Depression.
And what advice would you have for other future documentary makers?
Okay, so pay closer attention to detail. Don't switch shirts every shot. Also, another thing that I would advise doing is maybe just carefully consider the green screen, just because it was a little messy. There were some holes here and there. However, I really don't think any other people are going to be doing that.